Curious George. When the Going Clear documentary was making big waves in the news and film industries, I noticed a few independent Scientologists on social media and chat sites had voiced complaints about their viewpoints not being included in the dialogue. When Leah Remini's show made similar waves, those same voices seemed to grow in numbers and became extremely agitated toward the series. By the end of the show, they were downright antagonistic and hateful towards Leah and her prominent co-stars. Now, with the recent CNN Believers show about Scientology, the pushback against former members speaking out from other former members or independent practitioners has gone beyond nasty and seems downright nuts. What triggered all this ugly drama? Do some ex-members and independents really want to protect and defend their former church from being exposed as an abusive cult, or is something else going on? Yeah, it's a big topic. There's a lot of meat here, and so I'm only going to take little bits, couple little bites off this because it's, there's a lot here. First off, Reza Aslan's show, the Believer show that aired last week, I was going to look at doing a video about it as to deconstruct it. And then I thought, after I live tweeted the whole episode, I thought, it was so, what's the word, banal. It was so bad. I mean, it was just such a poorly put together episode in terms of what he was asserting about Scientology and how Scientology operates. The church, independent Scientologists, that there's some reformation going on, which is just total nonsense. It was just so badly put out there that I thought, wow, I'd have to it would be a very long video deconstructing all of that. It kind of comes back to the thing where, fake news or the Alex Jones types can say something. They can just throw these lines out there like Donald Trump does. They just, Obama's wiretapping me. And it takes weeks, months to deconstruct and disprove what takes seconds to say. And that's the kind of how it was with Reza's show is, he said so much stuff that was so full of it that I would just spend, just a very long time taking it all apart. And I thought, is it really worth my time? Is this guy really worth my time to have that big of an effect in the world at large? Or do we really just want to forget about it? Because the truth of the matter is that Reza Aslan is just a troll. And he just says and does things that he knows are controversial in order to get himself attention. And he's not in it to win it. He's not in it to push some viewpoint that is truth. He's just making waves for the sake of making waves. And his operating pattern apparently has been, I haven't watched all of his stuff, but apparently to throw out a position, get a bunch of people riled up about it, and then change his stance and make himself look like the moderate, reasonable person when, all these people are sitting there having at it over what he started. So I'm not interested in playing that game particularly, so I'm just I thought, I'll just skip the guy. Now, as far as independent Scientologists go, now this is where it gets kind of into a big field, but basically from my experience over the last few years with independent Scientologists, having had back and forth emails and private messages and tweets and various things, there is a variety of people who are involved in independent Scientology. I guess the one thing they have in common is that they feel that the technology of Scientology is good and is useful and is practical and helpful, and they don't really care about anything else. And by that I mean they don't care about whether L. Ron Hubbard was a con man or a liar. That doesn't matter to them. They're able to slough that off, and because they believe in what he wrote or said, not him. And that's kind of interesting, but I guess it makes a certain degree of sense in that you might have any scientist or mathematician or philosopher, somebody who might be a total scoundrel and hack and horrible person in his personal life, a philanderer, liar, whatever, but then professionally he produces really good work, right? I mean, you could come down on Isaac Newton for his religious beliefs, and yet there is no question that Isaac Newton's work was some of the most genius production ever on this planet from any human being. So, the argument is not just about, it's not a totally irrational stance to say, well, I can write off Hubbard and all of his nonsense, and I can still think that what Hubbard discovered or wrote or produced is good stuff. Okay. My problem with independent Scientologists is that what I've found over the years with them is that they cherry pick various parts of Scientology that they agree with, and they slough off or cast off all the rest, and they don't look at the fact that all of that was produced by L. Ron Hubbard. And so they're kind of willing to give him a pass on what they think is the good stuff and throw out the bad stuff. But there's not, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be a very rational examination of the entire thing. So I have disagreements with them because, of course, my position is that there is good stuff in it, but it's outweighed by the destructive stuff. And if you're going to take Scientology and you're going to take Hubbard's word for what Scientology is, then you have to take the whole thing. Because Hubbard himself would have railed against and tried to destroy any of these independent Scientologists, a fact that they seem very willing and eager almost to forget. And that's proven out by history. I mean, Hubbard came after these guys over and over again. Now, to address directly the question here, now that I've given some of that background and foundation for this, what I see happening from what I can discern from the tweets and the messages and the Facebook posts and whatnot from independent Scientologists is that they seem to be upset about Leah's show and about critics of Scientology, such as myself, because they think we are writing off the good parts of Scientology. We're saying it's a destructive cult. We're saying it's more harmful than beneficial. We're saying that Hubbard was a con man and a liar. I mean, I said, that some independent Scientologists are able to write off Hubbard. Some independent Scientologists think he's the cat's meow and the bee's knees, and he's just a wonderful guy. And they refuse to look at anything negative about him or any criticism of him, and they don't agree that he was a liar and a con man. So there is a spectrum within the world of independent Scientology on that. I didn't mean to paint all independent Scientologists as people who slough off Hubbard. Some of them are passionately dedicated to him. So anyway, within that spectrum, you get people who have disagreements with and a problem with people like me or people like Leah who have said, well, look, this stuff is really harmful and it destroys people's lives we don't acknowledge to their satisfaction how good they think the technology of Scientology is and how beneficial it is and how it saved their life or other people's lives. And I've tried to go and, express a little bit of a middle path in my videos and writing on this in saying that, hey, look, if it's helpful to you, great. I'm not saying that your beliefs are ill-founded, that it doesn't count, that what you got out of Scientology doesn't matter. I don't think I've said those things, but I have come across pretty harshly about L. Ron Hubbard, about David Miscavige, about the church itself. And I have said that Scientology is as a subject, not just the Church of Scientology, but as a subject taken as a whole, the ethics, the justice, the mind control that goes on just from the subject itself, not just necessarily from the authoritarian church, but the way the auditing works, right? The TRs and the fact that they put you in a hypnotic trance. I mean, that's just a fact. So I denigrate the technology, and they don't like that. They think that Leah and people who have been on her show denigrate the technology, and they don't like that because some of them some independent Scientologists are making a living by practicing Scientology outside the church. And it's I think it was, Upton Sinclair or Sinclair Lewis, I don't know, one of these Sinclair guys who has some quote about how, you're not going to get very far trying to get a person whose livelihood depends on something to examine it critically. And odds are they're not going to want to look at it too closely. because they're making a living with it, right? And so, so they can't afford to be overtly critical about that subject. And I think that's what you run into in a nutshell, like to kind of encapsulate this whole big answer I've just given here. It's kind of comes down to that, is that they're vested in believing that Scientology is still something that is good and true and valuable, and that it helped them, it helps other people, and therefore who am I or Leah or anybody else to downgrade it or castigate it. And this has become more and more passionate over the last year or so, as Scientology as a subject, not just the Church of Scientology, but the whole thing, has been looked upon with derision and contempt by people in the big wide world. Because people in the big wide world don't want to have anything to do with L. Ron Hubbard, David Miscavige, Church Scientology, or Scientology itself. And independent Scientologists don't like that. They've always had this idea that they're on the side of right and good, and that if they could just get the bad parts out of the church, everything would be great, and Scientology could maybe somehow have a reformation or somehow carry on with this mission that L. Ron Hubbard said of clearing the planet, which is a pipe dream. It's a total fantasy that he created in his followers, and some people who come out of the church hold on to that fantasy because it defines who they are. So that's what I can say about that.